Hello, good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning, and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. I'm here with Martin to preview Aston Villa's FA Fourth Cup tie on Sunday against Tottenham. And yeah, make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Help us. We're about 15 away from 5,300 on the road to 6K, ultimately on the road to 10K. So yes, like, subscribe, get your comments in. And you will have noticed that, yes, there are some players on that have left now. And we've also got some new players that we need to add into our intro. So we will be doing that very, very soon. And hopefully some of those new players will be playing on Sunday. Martin, how you doing, mate? Big game on Sunday coming up.
Doing well. Thankfully, the Wi-Fi and the internet has been sorted, so I can actually talk clearly, and not everyone having to delay and wait 5 minutes after I'm finished talking. So it's good, feeling good, and I'm really confident for Sunday, which is a bit odd for me to say that we're going to be confident going into an FA Cup game.
That's it. That's exactly where I wanted to start. FA Cup fourth round. We did make the fourth round last season. Replay. We got the draw against Chelsea. Then we took them to a replay at Villa Park, thinking, right, we'll get into Chelsea, we'll get the victory, and then probably one of our worst performances of the season, probably one of Chelsea's best performances of their season, and we lost 3-1. So is it going to be a different story this time round against Tottenham?
You would think so, because the confidence at the minute from Tottenham Hotspur isn't exactly great. Uh, because of their injury list. I mean, it's extensive at the minute, and then you've got Ange, who seems to be in a bit of trouble. His tactics seem to be all over the place because he's not doing Plan A or Plan B. So you would like to think that the confidence is going to be high for us, and we might have a few injuries ourselves, but it's not hampered our squad as such.
Yeah. And before we get into Tottenham and get into kind of Villa's side and what who might or might not be able to play, how do you think Emery will approach this in terms of the way that the season's going? And because from a Villa fan's perspective, we want to win every competition. And if you can win that fourth round tie, you get to the last 16, you're probably thinking, dependent on the draw, we've got a good shot of going really far in this competition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you get this win under the belt, and I think Emery will approach this with caution, in my opinion. That I think he will put out a good lineup, and one that can really damage Spurs and win the midfield battles, because that's exactly where Tottenham are kind of hurt at this minute, along with their full back line. I mean, if I go through their injury list right now, if you're it, I mean,
Mm.
Romero, Vicario, Madison, Johnson, Werner, Van de Ven, Richarlison, Udogi, they're all missing. These are players that is pretty much the core of Tottenham Hotspur, and the way that they play, and they really get the system going for Ange Postecoglu. With them being gone, and he's trying to implement the same tactics, which is nothing wrong. I love that. It's his bravery. He wants to show that everyone is under the same system, and that's not going to change. But when you look at the previous 10 games coming into this match, they've only won one, and they've been battered by nearly every team. They just seem to find a way to beat this Spurs side this minute due to their injuries. So I think Emery is going to approach this with one of caution, to probably rest some players in terms of, because we've got a game now, probably 3 or 4 games coming up in the next week or two with Chelsea, Ipswich, and Liverpool all at home. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a good opportunity to rest some players, but also a great opportunity to give some players their debuts in this cup. So I think he will approach this with caution, but also good attacking football to really hurt that Spurs defence.
Mm. Yes, yeah, I hope so. I hope so. And talk about Spurs, you've gone through their injury list, and they're also, you know, dare I say it, they seem to get a couple of results, then they fall again, and it's crisis time. And Ange is under pressure. Obviously, they got their heavy defeat against Liverpool. I do think going into Anfield only 1-0 up was always going to be difficult, but if you see the meltdowns of the fans, you'd think that it was absolute crisis time. So, how do you think kind of Tottenham approached this game, and is it this is two questions. How do they approach it? And then is it like real pressure stations on top of Ange Postecoglu if Villa actually win the game?
I think Ange's going to approach this the way he's approached every game, with the same philosophy, with his, his style of football that he wants to go into and implement to all the players again, which is nothing wrong. But when you have the injury list of players that I've just mentioned there, you have to change something. You have to be a bit more cautious about to try and keep things tight and not get an embarrassing scoreline or not get embarrassing results like we seen the other night against Liverpool, losing 4-0, and they didn't show up. It was as simple as that. They didn't show up, and it's a semi-final. Like, the lad his tactics there should have been keep it tight, keep it simple, and if we're in the game within the first half, it's great. And they were, in my opinion, they were. They might have been 1-0 down, and it's 1-1 in aggregate. But that's when you kind of go, right, still keep it tight for half an hour for the last 15 minutes, and then you see, can you nick something from that? That's how we should have approached that game, and especially that second half, because they just fell apart. And that's what's been happening to Spurs. They've been falling apart. They might be in good positions in first half where they're still in the game if they're drawn, or they're winning by that odd goal, and they're getting turned over. Everyone just seems to turn them over, and it's really concerning for Tottenham fans. And I know a few of my friends that they actually support Spurs, and I've asked them, would you sack Ange Postecoglu? One said no because of the injury list. It's kind of out of his control, and he's not really getting backed by Daniel Levy in the transfer market, which I'd say fair enough. And the one said yeah, because regardless of the injuries that you have, every player needs to be able to step up, and he feels they put out a good enough team. And considering the list of fixtures and the teams of the quality that have beaten them, he has to go because he's not changing his style. There's only plan A, there's no plan B. And I can understand their frustration, and I can also understand some will be a bit more sympathetic of the situation that are coming from up above or through their injuries list as well. But for me, I think if he loses this game, I think he's going to get the sack, because then there's nothing to play for. I think that's what Daniel Levy is holding out for. The fact that they had a cup semi-final probably gave him the benefit of the doubt. And if they won that to the final, he'd still have his job. And now with this FA Cup game, it's probably his last chance to say, right, if you win this FA Cup game and you got that next round, happy days, you keep your job to then. So maybe it's going to be something like that, something like a Ten Hag, how they won the FA Cup and he kept his job. Maybe something like that is what's going to have to keep his job.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, they've got the Europa League still, but there's a lot of football to be played in that, so that's a difficult one to rest your laurels on. Now, you've talked there about kind of how they're in such bad form and they seem to crumble. Yet coming up against Aston Villa, they've got a few players who cause us some big problems, and you've singled out Son, who always seems to score against us, Kulusevski, who's a very dangerous player if he's playing in the right position, and then Matisse Tel, who obviously came on against Liverpool, but you'd fancy to make his first start in the FA Cup against us, who could cause us some real problems as well.
Yeah, I mean, with Heung-min Son, this is probably going to be a bit of a pun, but he's troublesome against us, because he always does something. He'll always, even if he doesn't score, he's always cooking the full backs. He's always making things happen. He's getting great balls in behind, making space, and he just always does so well against us. And he's one player I hate to come up against, and I love him in the team because he just always makes something happen. And like you've seen against Liverpool, right? He probably wasn't in the game, but when he hit the crossbar, that was something out of nothing. That's how good this fella is. Like, he can make something out of completely nothing. And that for us is going to be worrying, because if they're still in the game, he's one player I would not want to see go 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper, because we've seen it before when Engels made us that missed kick, Son went in to score, get the hat-trick against us by beating us 4-0. Getting plenty of assists. He seems to have a very good record against us, and it's annoying with Kulusevski. When he's in the right position, I think he's been nearly out of position now because of these injuries and everything like that. And before these injuries happened, he was playing through the middle, and he was exceptional. He was absolutely exceptional. But then he's back kind of out on the right wing, and even though that is probably, you could say, his natural position, but with the system that Ange plays, it's not working for him because he's not getting enough of the ball. Like that's why it comes through him in the middle. He goes into spaces and he does really well with Matthias Tell. For some reason, any player that makes a debut against us seems to score or get their very first goal for the club against us. I mean, it's one of them old cliche. We've seen it with Rasmus Højlund. We've seen it with different players that even on the duct would seem to score against us. Like they just always seem to happen. I mean, Rodri is a prime example of Man City. Would rarely score, but when he does, it's against us. So it's just, I think that might happen if you're not going to keep a clean sheet, which is probably what we're all hoping out for, is to keep a clean sheet. But like them three there are probably going to be the most dangerous. You could say their midfield, but their midfield is looking weak. I mean, on paper there against Liverpool suggested that it was a real physical midfield, and I thought looking at it, that's really going to give Liverpool a good run for their money. But they were just completely blown away, like completely blown away. And if I was a Spurs fan, I'd be looking at that midfield very, very worried.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens with Tottenham, but I certainly think you summed it up well. They've still got some really troublesome players, but Ange Postecoglu could well be under pressure. But a lot of the time when they've been backed against the wall, they've come out with a result. But I just hope it isn't on Sunday. Now with Villa, we've very excited, and I put a tweet out the other day just saying, I'm really looking forward to this game on Sunday, and a lot of it is down to the fact that we've made some interesting signings and potentially signings that we wouldn't have made in any other year, really, with regards to the profile of the club. And they could well make their debuts on Sunday. And I'm talking about Marcus Rashford, who's there lifting the weights, getting in shape, and Marco Asensio. I mean, it's very exciting times, isn't it, to potentially, get these players making their debuts in the FA Cup on Sunday, and will give the crowd and the players, the team, a real boost.
Absolutely. I mean, with Ollie Watkins being out now for the next 10 days, so it's an opportunity for Rashford to probably play in his, favourite position, being up front, and, to really show that why he is a natural striker and why he should be playing that number 9 position. And if he does well, that puts Ollie Watkins kind of nearly back to square one in that Duran debate. So I think Marcus Rashford is really going to do well against Tottenham. He seems to have a good record against Tottenham too. So I think it's a good game for him, especially with that defence being so leaky. Because I've seen the back line again. I'm tying this off to last night, unfortunately. But when you see Archer, Danzo, now again it was Danzo debut, so he's a natural centre half, and you have Ben Davies and Dejan Spence. Marcus Rashford has to really have a go at them. Really run in behind, really go at them. And same for Marco Asensio. I think he's incredible. He can hit one from distance. He's got a great passing range, unlock defenses. So it's a great opportunity for these two lads, to really cement their place, really say that we're not just here on loan and to make up the numbers. We're here to compete. We're here to start. We're here to, make things happen for Aston Villa. And that's what I want to see. Like, I've always said I don't want players coming to us just because we have Champions League. I want players to come to us just to play for us, and that's going to be key in these next few weeks. Never mind just this game, but we have to wait and see.
Yeah, definitely. And Unai in his press conference talked about, I guess, one or two injuries there. You mentioned Ollie Watkins, who's probably out for this week, could be back in training next week. Tyrone Mings is back in training, but may not be ready for Sunday. Barkley the same. And then I guess the longer term ones of Pau Torres and Matty Cash as well. So still a few injuries, and it's probably looking like Kamara will be back into centre back, or he may play Bahada there, but I doubt it'll probably be Kamara back in there because Axel Disasi unfortunately is cup tied. So how do you view the kind of lineup on Sunday?
I kind of view the lineup being, in my opinion, with Bogard going into centre half. I think you have to have Kamara in the midfield for me because he's so much more composed. I mean, at centre half, he looks a little bit out of place for me, even though he does a job, don't get me wrong, and it's great to see that. But I just think if you're going to have Boubacar Kamara in your lineup, he needs to be in midfield. He really makes things happen. He can get them balls in between the lines. Him and Tielemans have a very good connection. And I think Bogart can hold his own as centre half. I've seen like he looks really good. He's comfortable on the ball. He's not afraid to put in a tackle. So I just think that it should be Bogart, to play centre half. I know people are probably saying, put Kamara in centre half, put Onana next to Tielemans, but then you're looking at it just looks a little bit off balance, and that's what I'm trying to go for. I'm trying to have at least of a balanced lineup, to have one player who's naturally a centre half to go there, even though he's young. And I know you want to protect these players when they're young and everything else, but there's a reason why players have to step up when they step up. Like if you look at, I'm going to put this to Marcus Rashford. It was a fluke what happened to him really in that Europa League game with Rooney getting injured, Martial getting injured, and then he had to step up, and he did. And this is what Bogart's going to have to do now. He's going to have to step up and cement his place. And if he cements his place in centre half, great. That means then it's one player that you've got less concern about in that back line. If these injuries ever happen again, you won't be worried. And I think for Kamara, he has to be playing through the middle for me, because he's just so comfortable on the ball. He makes things happen. He breaks it up as well. He's just an all-round centre defensive midfielder. In my opinion, probably the second best centre defensive midfielder after Rodri, of course. He's just so good, and that's where he needs to play.
So who goes up front then for you? Who's obviously you're saying Rashford through the middle? Who plays? Either side. Are we talking Asensio from the start? Are we talking Ramsey Rodgers? Or are we talking Bailey? Because yes, we've got a few players out at the back, but we've certainly got plenty of options in midfield and further forward. I haven't even talked about McGinn or Onana you've mentioned there. So plenty of options for him in terms of midfield and moving forward.
I think if I have Marcus Rashford through the middle, again, I want a bit of balance. I'd have Morgan Rogers behind them. I'd then have Malin playing on the right, and I'd probably go with John McGinn on the left,
Marlon.
just to protect that left side. Just to have that bit of oomph and a bit of bite and a bit of leadership to really get that going. So I just think it's vital, in my opinion, and I do have the line up here, and I'm going.
Well, just while you get in the lineup, let's just touch on the fact that the Champions League squad was announced, and unfortunately, Unai Emery had a very difficult decision to make, and he had to leave two players out of the new signings, and that ended up being Daniel Marlin and Andres Garcia. Now, I don't think too many people were surprised about Garcia, and I think the injury to Tyrone Mings and the sale of Diego Carlos meant that another player had to be signed, and then that kind of left the pressure on to, I guess, leave another player out. And it's really unfortunate, isn't it, that Marlon misses out, but I guess he's really got to show he's going to have enough games in the Premier League. He's going to have hopefully enough games in the FA Cup to kind of get us back into Europe and clinch a spot in the Champions League for next season.
Yeah, and I feel sorry for Marlon, to really miss out on this, UCL squad, because that's what he was brought in to do. But that's what they were all brought in to do. But due to these rules, we were only able to register 3 players, and you feel that with the experience of with Marcus Rashford, the experience of Asensio being a the Champions League, Lassie, of course, being the centre half, that we kind of need somebody in there. They had to play. It was as simple as they were the ones who have to play. They're the ones who have to come into the lineup. And that's the way it's going to be. I mean, Mal unfortunately misses out. I know he was in the final last year with Borussia Dortmund, really had a good tournament. And then, of course, young Garcia, who you felt was always probably going to be in the lineup because he's young. And if it was a case of being 4 players, which that's what I'd seen first, you felt Garcia was never going to come anywhere near it.
Yeah.
But with the rule of 3, it was always going to be a tough decision who it was going to be. But you felt the loanees were going to get it.
Yeah, and and the loan players are going to be brought in for that specific reason, and Rashford and Asensio in particular, their Champions League experience, I guess their match winning experience, because it's two-legged affairs can be decided on one moment. We get a free kick on the edge of the box, a long range shot from Marcus Rashford, something like that could decide the tie. So you can certainly imagine that playing into the thought process of Unai Emery. So look, really real shame for the players. But like I say, we've still got plenty of games in the Premier League to come. Like you said before, we've got now 3 Premier League home games in a week because of the Liverpool going through in the Carabao Cup. And then that then gives us a bit more time later on in that month or later on in March to prepare for that Champions League game. That we've got, whether it's against Lisbon or Dortmund or Bruges or Sporting Lisbon. So or Atalanta. So that's gives us a bit more time. So that's interesting. So yes, now back onto the FA Cup, and just to round off the show, I'm confident about it. I'm really looking forward to it. And let's just look at your predicted lineup. So you've gone with Garcia, nice. Emi Martinez in goal. So no start for Olsen. Garcia, Bajada, Digne, Tielemans, Kamara, Marlon, Rodgers, McGinn, and Rashford. So I like that. I don't have any problems with that. It's a nice lineup to me, and again gives us options off the bench. You're talking the likes of Bailey, Maatson. You're talking Onana on the bench as well, Ramsey on the bench. So some real good options for Villa, and that's, I guess, what Unai Emery's always wanted in terms of players coming back. And like you say, we've had injuries, and we've never really been able to field a side with, I think, probably 1 or 2 times where we've had a really strong bench. Now it looks like we have got a strong bench, and we've still got players to come back. So I'm really looking forward to this. But I'll get your score prediction first, Martin. What are you saying for Sunday?
I'm going to go with 3-1 Aston Villa, simply because we don't keep clean sheets. I wish we say we could, but we don't. And my goal scores are going to be, I'm going to back Marcus Rashford. I'm going to back Malin to get his first goal, and then I'm going to go with a cheeky Luca Digne goal.
Oh, interesting. Just for the sake of not saying the same score as you, because I think 3-1 is generally a pretty good score in terms of trying to predict for an FA Cup tie. But let's say 3-2. I think it'll be a little bit more tight than that. But I'm going to say Marcus Rashford for a goal. Let me just get that line up again. I'm going to say Daniel Marlin as well for a goal. I like that. And let's say a Bailey off the bench. 3-2 Villa win. That's what I'm going to say.
Nice.
Right. And for the first time in a long time, Villa getting into the hat for the 5th round draw, which would be absolutely brilliant. Those ties, I believe, will be played the first weekend of March. So that would be excellent as well. And yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree with Martin's lineup? Who would you start? Who would you have on the bench? Would you start Asensio? Because I haven't even talked about him. And then what do you think the score's going to be? I've said 3-2. Martin said 3-1. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And are we going to get through to that 5th round? We will be back with our match reaction, instant match reaction, also full match reaction, hopefully, and then reaction to the draw. Fingers crossed if we get through. Fans forum, and who have we got next? Ipswich preview as well, and also potentially Lions Den latest with Charlie, aka AVFC Academy. So plenty to talk about next week as well with the young Lions. They obviously had a great result in the FA Youth Cup, and they've got their UEFA Champions League, UEFA Youth League game next week. So we'll have plenty to catch up with him on. Make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're marching on to 6,000 subscribers, so please do help us get there on the road to 10K. Like I say, get your comments and your thoughts on Sunday's game. We're buzzing for it. Can't wait for it. Rashford goal. Come on. Thank you, Martin. Thank you all for watching. And as always, remember, we all follow the Villa.